I hope this is working. I'm trying to figure it all out. The joys of technology. When it works, it works. When it doesn't, it's a little bit weird. Okay, so it looks like it was working last time, but then did not. Hopefully, this time it is actually working. Um, so I'll have to go move those old ones. Oh my goodness. Okay, so hey everyone, I hope you are doing well. Um, for those of you who don't know me, or this is the first time you're coming across me, P.S. This is the first time in a long time that I have used the desktop setup for Facebook Live. Usually I'm using my phone, so it's a little bit easier. You just press go live and it works. This time it was just a little bit funky because there's all these new things that I hear, which means there's probably all these new features that I could be using that I don't know that I could be using. Anyway, again, for those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Christina Mathewson. I am a naturopath, herbalist, GAPS practitioner, and life coach, along with being a mentor for other people in the healing arts. So, naturopaths, nutritionists, herbalists, coaches, those types of people. I generally will mentor them in both creating their business but also helping their clients. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. I have no idea where live questions and things will come from. I can see that there's one person on live. What I am going to do is just open it up on my phone so that I can see there any questions that might come through. If you are watching this live, feel free to say hi. Let me know where you are from. Also, if you do have any questions while I'm on live, please feel free to actually pop those into the comments as well. Assuming I can see them, I will actually, attempt to answer them. Otherwise, I will answer them in the comments, or I will come back and do another live at another point answering that particular question. So, this little live today, essentially what I did on my Instagram page was I actually asked the question, what questions do you have? And so I asked that question and I got a couple of really great responses. So I thought I would come in here and sort of answer those for you. Now, the first question that came up was raising estrogen levels, which I thought was a super interesting question because that's not normally the thing that people will ask me. The thing that is most likely happening for many women is actually that they'll have excess estrogen levels, or that they've got too much, or they'll ask questions like, how do you increase your progesterone? So it was really interesting to get this question about estrogen because it's not a normal type of question that I see. Now, I want to give a little bit of education while I'm actually answering these questions as well. Um, and so the question that the way I want to explain this actually is I think about women's hormones as an estrogen, as a cup. So we all, as females, have a cup of hormones, and we can only fit so much in our cup. And so normally what happens is that we have, around about 80% of it is kind of filled up with estrogen, and then around 20% is available for other hormones, including progesterone. Now, progesterone is our like beautiful, loving, feel good hormone. It's the one that makes us feel loved up. It's the one that, is feeling nice and cozy and all of the things, and the feeling that we want to feel most of the time. Um, the other is estrogen. These are the two predominant. They're not the only hormones that come into play for females, but the two predominant ones. And so our estrogen, for example, is like our bossy big sister in the sense that, she's very bossy and, you do what she tells you to do or you get in trouble. And so estrogen for majority of women, um, if you've got a normal hormone cycle and you don't have like really crampy periods or really excessive bleeding or really tender breasts when you're ovulating and those types of things, then you've got what we would consider as a normal cycle. So if you could, you know, barely know your period's coming until it's come, other than, cyclically, on the calendar that it's coming, then you've got a really good stable hormonal profile there. But for a lot of women, they're not experiencing that. They are experiencing discomfort and so on. And that then tells me that they've probably got too much estrogen. And so let's say this is how much you're meant to have, they might have this much. Now, what often happens in the thinking is the thought process is, oh, you've got too much estrogen, we'll just give you some more progesterone. But what they don't understand is that we have the cup, and you can only fit so much in this cup. If the cup is already full, so you've got too much estrogen, if the cup is already full, there is only a little bit of progesterone that can come in there. No matter how much your body is making, you can only fit however much available space you have. You can only fit that much in the cup. You can't, you can keep pouring into it, but you're not going to get any more progesterone into that cup. And so when we're looking at some of the hormonal displacement that a lot of women have, so they might have endo or PCOS, or they might just have heavy periods, or really excessive cramping and those types of things. What we're looking at is there being too much estrogen in that cup. But some of the thought process on that is you just put more progesterone in. But like I said, you can't fit more into that cup than what is actually available in that space. And so what we need to do, instead of trying to just shove more progesterone into that cup, we need to actually just start to drain the cup of a little bit of estrogen. Now, when we have that excess estrogen that's taking place, what's really happening is that the liver is probably overworked in regards to toxicity. So it doesn't have the ability to do what it normally would do with estrogen, which is to break it down, so break it back down to its molecular components, or recycle it so that it can be reused. Now, if the liver is busy trying to fight off all of the toxins and detox and do all of those things, because we're living in a world that's got a lot more toxicity in it, it's got xenoestrogens in it, phytoestrogens in it, it's got fragrances and chemicals and all of the things, and it's chockers and it's busy, it can't necessarily do that process that it needs to do with that estrogen. And so then we end up with excess estrogen. So the way to reverse engineer that is actually to start to look at ways of supporting your liver and helping it to reduce the estrogen that's actually there. So helping it with detox processes and then helping it to reduce the excess estrogen that is there, which then allows more room for this progesterone to come in. And then we have a much more balanced hormonal profile in that perspective. And then we see things like endo and polycystic ovarian syndrome and all of that type of stuff start to balance. Now, I'm generalizing and I'm simplifying this for you. There's a little bit more that goes on, but that is essentially how we want to focus on it, is if we support that liver and we support the gut, which is directly linked to the liver, then we can naturally bring those down. We can also use some really beautiful herbs that help with that. And one of my favorite herbs that help with that is Schisandra. Schisandra, I always think she's like your best friend. She's going to help your liver do a little bit of clearing when it comes to excess estrogen specifically. It also clears medication a little bit more efficiently as well. So there is some mindfulness there, like when you're going to use Schisandra, about whether you're taking medication and separating the two so that your medication works, and then the Schisandra doesn't like stop it from actually working because it's clearing it too fast from your liver. But that's where you want to talk to a practitioner and get really good support for what's happening for your body, how it's happening in your body, and what would be the appropriate herbs to actually use for you, as well as any other sort of supplements that might actually be helpful along with food, and eating really good food to help clean and cleanse and support that liver. So check in with your practitioner and make sure that you've got really good advice on that before you just start haphazarding stuff. But the question wasn't excess estrogen. The question was, how do we raise estrogen levels? Now, when it comes to raising estrogen levels, one of my favorite things to do is to look at our leafy green vegetables, but also to look at wild yam. So wild yam is this beautiful herb that is an estrogen modulator. So anything that is a modulator, it raises what's low, decreases what's high. So if the estrogen levels are too low, it will raise the estrogen levels. If they're too high, it will drop them. So it's this beautiful modulating herb. And a lot of women have used it externally as a cream. You can also use it internally as well as a tea or a liquid herb, etc. Again, I always recommend checking in with your practitioner as what's going to be the most appropriate for you. But that's one of my favorite herbs for raising estrogen, if that's the agenda. It also helps if you've got too much estrogen, because it is that beautiful modulator. So I did see we've got a couple of people on watching. Hey guys, nice to see you here. Kylie is saying, I'm very curious as to what you have to say about COVID. Okay, so I can totally jump to that question. And one of the things is that I love that I had COVID because as a practitioner, I'm technically not allowed to talk about COVID, but I can talk about my personal experience. So please remember anything that I'm saying about COVID is from my own personal experience, not from a medical sort of standpoint. And so it's my own personal experience. My family of 9 just had COVID a little while ago. We're probably about a week and a half out now, and I think that just starting to clear some residual stuff. So I have like a tiny cough left still. Energy levels are just actually just starting to pick back up, and I think that I'm almost back again with my energy levels. But it was really interesting because we have a family of 9, so we have 7 children, and every single one of us had it. And it was interesting to see the differences that some of my family members had, as well as the sameness that we had. So for most of my family, it was fairly similar in the sense that it was like having a flu. We, got headaches, we had body aches, we had a temperature, we had a sore throat, and fever. Fever, that was the other thing for us. Um, and it kind of went up and down. I thought I thought that I had escaped it actually because I was the last one in my household to get it. Everybody else had it before me, or had symptoms before me. And I was like, yes, I'm rocking it. I'm doing well. I'm not getting this thing. But I did actually get it, and I was the last one to get it. And it took me a little bit to get over it. And I do have some comorbidities in that that could potentially make it a little bit more challenging for me. But actually, at the end of the day, a full 10 days essentially from really, really sick to like, in the sense that I was just in bed and I'm not getting out of bed other to go to the toilet and drink some water. Um, and thankfully, there was a staggeredness in our approach or in our infection rate in our house, in that, we kind of were a little bit staggered. So some people were sick while other people were healthy and well. And then other people were in like, really good recovery space while other people got sick. So there was always somebody in our house to cook. But it did, there were certainly about a week there where I just went, what, I'm just going to rest and allow myself to recover. The things that we personally used in our household to recover was, of course, we had lots of soups and stews. So, really easily digestible food. That's what we consumed. And when people didn't feel like consuming food, they didn't consume food. Um, Water was the most important thing, like making sure you're staying hydrated. And um, from that perspective, we put a little bit of honey and a little bit of salt in our water as well, just to help keep us hydrated, especially when we're having a fever, just to help to keep us hydrated. And then soups and stews when people were up to actually eating, because some members of the family did vomit. Some members of the family did get a little bit of diarrhea. So again, we wanted to make sure hydration was looked after. So some salt and some honey in our water to help look after our hydration, also look after our electrolytes, and a little bit of glucose in there to keep energy levels up. The other things we did was detox baths. So, especially in those achy stages, getting in a bath with Epsom salts and a little bit of bicarb and some kombucha was really, really helpful. You can shift out kombucha for things like apple cider vinegar, and you can leave out anything that doesn't actually work for you. But that's essentially what we did, like detox baths, those types of things, hydration, made sure that we were looked after. And then, of course, we used my Formula One, which is a formula that I sort of created, looking at some of the key areas that we're seeing in research that helped people, when your immune system is low. So looking at immune modulators, looking at herbs that are really protective of the brain, that are zinc ionophores, all of those types of things. So I packaged all that up into a formula, and I had that in my house all ready to go. So we took that, we took some vitamin C, and that was pretty much it. It was mostly like rest, and when we, we'd get outside and rest in the sun. But really just looking after self, looking like caring for self. I have, where do I have it? I have a pulsometer. Yeah. So I highly recommend everybody getting one of these, just a little pulsometer. You can get it for about $5. And essentially, it takes your pulse, it also takes your heart rate, and it takes your oxygenation. And that was the thing that I used and kept looking at, just to make sure that everybody's oxygenation was good, making sure that pulse rate and all those types of things are really good as well. And there were a couple of times where I personally, my oxygenation just started to get a little bit low. And that's because, previously, excuse me, there's a little bit of that cough left still. But previously in my own medical history, I've been on life support, so that I have been incubated, which does mean that I do have a little bit of predisposition for my lungs to be a little bit weaker than they normally would have been. Um, they are mostly pretty good. Like, I really don't have a lot. I did, after incubation, I did have a chest infection, and then a couple of other things that happened in regards to my lungs. But generally speaking, I'm pretty healthy and well from that perspective. I don't have, asthma and so on. But I did notice my oxygenation get a little bit low, so I did practice some of the things that I tell my clients to do, which is like deep breathing, as well as singing and doing some humming. Both of those activities vibrate the actual lungs and help to break up any sort of stuff that's there. So I practiced those things, and within a day, it all had come back up, and I was good and fine after that. So yeah, those were the things that I used. I used my Formula One detox baths, hydration with honey and salt, and rest, vitamin D by laying outside. All of those types of things. That's what we used, and yeah, everybody in my household is pretty much recovered. I think there might be every so often you'll hear a cough, but it's not like the first couple of days it was like barking dogs in our house in regards to the cough. But that's all gone now, and yeah, we're all pretty much there. Like, I would say, for me, I would say I'm probably 95% recovered. I think there's like maybe 5% where I've still got a little bit of a cough, which doesn't happen that often. It's happening now because I'm talking a lot and I'm probably talking fast. Um, but yeah, mostly pretty good. So next question that was sent to me was the eczema question. So I was sharing, I shared a little in my stories about, um, what was it? There was a cream that, no, let me just check. P.S. If you do have any questions while I'm on, let me know. Ah, so the thing that I shared in the stories, oh, and I shared on my page as well, which was a post around our skin being absorbent. It was the gut post. That's what it was. So I shared a post around our gut being. Somebody had put out this thing of like, your gut is the place where you get all of your nutrients. And I'm like, actually, it's kind of not. Like, it is the place we get the majority of our nutrients from, but it is not the only place that we get nutrients. We get nutrients from our skin, we absorb it. So if you use, for example, magnesium cream, like, you will absorb the magnesium through your skin. Iodine, I really like to use an external iodine that we paint on the outs, like the soft parts of our skin, so not like the top of it where it's been sunned and all of that, but like the soft parts of our skin, and that helps us to absorb iodine. And I like that way better than an internal iodine, simply because you've got a visual cue. You can visually see the iodine absorbing. You can also see that the stain, if it doesn't need to absorb anymore, and you want to move it around. You don't just leave it on one part, because you will get a stain on the skin. So anywhere that's soft, so the sides of the breasts, the stomach, the underarms, those types of places are really great places to put your iodine patch that you paint on the outside. And essentially you'll stop absorbing when you don't need any more of it, and that's a really good indicator. If the stain has stayed there for 24 hours, you don't need to be having any more at this moment in time. Check again in probably 6 weeks to 3 months, depending on what your health issues are there from that perspective. But I really like that because we're at far less risk of overdosing from that perspective. So magnesium, iodine, all sorts of other things can be absorbed through your skin as well. And so our skin is a very porous material, cells, etc. Um, and it can pull nutrients in through it. So that's why we need to be really mindful about what we're actually putting on our skin. There are some formulations in regards to skin care and skin cream that have been formulated from the perspective of larger molecules, and those larger molecules don't get absorbed, they just kind of stay on the skin. But everything else, a lot of the ones on the market are actually have not taken that into consideration, and their thought process is they are getting it into the skin because they think that makes it healthier. Um, but you are going to absorb any of the chemicals and the toxins and the preservatives and all of that type of stuff that gets put on your skin as well. And so she saw that post, and then she asked the question about what is the best eczema cream. Now, for me, I actually think that some of the little herbalists that you can buy your eczema cream from are probably doing a much better job than some of the big companies are doing. Simply because the little herbalist is probably making it up as you need it versus it's sitting on a shelf and it has to be shelf stable and be able to last a long period of time and all of those types of things. Um, but I prefer to look at things like that's got maybe a beeswax in it, or I'm a little bit when it comes to coconut, because coconut and eczema can sometimes be beautiful, like it sometimes is amazing. For other people, though, it is too detoxing. So, coconut is one of those products that is really good at detoxification. So, it does this beautiful job of detoxification, which means it's going to draw more things out of you than you perhaps want. Um, and that can make eczema a lot worse, not necessarily bad, but like appear worse and more discomfort, and then create more space for infections and so on to grow, because it's just pulled the toxins to the layer of the skin, and then that makes it worse. So there's a love-hate relationship there. Some people it's fabulous, some people it's not so great. Olive oil, on the other hand, tends to be a lot better. So a herbal base that's made in olive oil tends to be really good for most people. Again, I always think everything needs to be kind of like tested, because we're not all exactly the same. There are some overarching principles that take place with our bodies, but there is also individual tweaking that needs to happen as well, based on what's actually personalized for the physiology of that individual. And so, from that perspective, I always think it's a good idea to, get support so that you're getting exactly what you actually need versus I'm just going to give this a try and then blaming the product for not fixing it when it wasn't the right product for you. And that's a bit of the challenge there. But I do love like a good calendula cream, a good. I'm just thinking things that calm it. So a calendula and a chamomile are a really good cream, because like the calendula is soothing for it. The chamomile is also, marshmallow root is again another really good one to have in one of those types of blends. But when I'm thinking about eczema and a cream, I'm thinking about something that's really just going to soothe the external expression of that eczema. Because remembering what's happening on the outside of our skin, because the cells on the outside of our body are exactly the same as the cells that line our gut. And so if we're seeing a rash or something take place on the outside of our skin, it is also taking place in our digestive system. And so remembering that the outside stuff is just the symptom. The inside stuff is how we actually resolve the problem and we fix why it's happening in the first place. And when we're looking at someone with eczema, we're probably most likely looking at somebody with leaky gut or gut permeability, a microbiome in the gut that's out of balance, levels of toxicity that are too high for the liver and the kidneys and other accessory detox organs to actually manage. And so here's the picture that I generally have when it comes to eczema, asthma, and female period problems, etc., etc., is that the liver has got this beautiful job of actually detoxifying all of these waste products that come in, and it's consistently shifting and moving and packaging and doing all the things. So stuff that's coming in and the stuff that we've got. So it's got to break down, metabolize hormones and excess stuff that's in there like proteins, etc. And so it's got a really big job to do, and it's super important. But sometimes we live in an environment now that has more jobs to do than the liver has resources to do them. And so the liver's just like hanging out over here, just going, you know what? I'm like flat chat. Please help me. And so it sends out this calling to like, hey lungs, I'm like flat chat. Can you like take care of some of these toxins? And so the lung goes, yeah, sure, mate, send them over. And so the liver then, convert some of those toxins into CO2. That CO2 then gets moved to the lungs, and then the lungs actually will release that CO2 into the atmosphere, and we breathe in more oxygen. Now, it can do that for a bit, and it does that, that's part of its process that it does. But from the toxicity point of view, it's not its main function. Its main function is not to take care of necessarily of the jobs that the liver is meant to be doing, but it does it for a bit. And when it does it more than for a bit, that's when we start to see breaking down of the lungs. That's when we start to see things like asthma start to develop, when we see other chronic lung issues actually start to develop. And again, please remember, I'm generalizing and simplifying. um, it will do the same thing with the skin. Like, yo, bro, I'm like flat chat over here with like way too many toxins to deal with. Can you like take care of some of them? And he's like, yeah, sure, mate, send them over. And so again, the skin, the liver will send toxins to the skin, and that's where we see things like eczema, rashes, etc., that are from an internal point of view starting to express themselves. And then what happens is that the toxins come to the skin because they're being released, and those toxins change the microbiome of the skin, which then calls in pathogenic bacteria, and they are the ones that create those infections that we might see when somebody's got eczema and they've got open wounds and all of that type of stuff. So there's a whole thing that takes place in there. And when we want to fix the problem versus just deal with the symptoms, we want to go deeper than just putting the cream on the outside. The cream on the outside is just for symptomatic relief. It doesn't fix the problem. The thing that fixes the problem is doing the gut work, reducing your river of toxicity, repairing your gut lining, and then supporting your liver with lots of support from a detoxing point of view, nourishing it, making sure it's got all of the nutrients that it actually needs to be able to do the roles that it does, and then the skin will actually improve. It will often just get a little bit worse before it then starts to get a little bit better. But once we've identified some of the river of toxicity, which is food that you eat, chemicals that you use, like maybe your dishwashing liquid is a problem, maybe your things that you wash clothes with are a problem, your shampoos, your conditioners, etc. All of that, when we start to identify those and we can change those, we actually will see a reduction in symptoms. And then as we repair the gut lining, we start to resolve the problem as to why the skin is doing that in the first place, and why you're experiencing the eczema in the first place. So those are my thoughts around that. And if you want to come and join me in my Understanding the Gaps program, or the Gaps diet, that course is starting in, I think, 7 days, six or 7 days. It starts on the 18th of May. So come and learn about that, and you will learn all of this intricate information. It's a really great deep dive into how the gut and the microbiome and the immune system all interrelate to create these common problems that people are experiencing. All right, so that's 3 questions down. The last question that I have, and I'm just checking to see if anybody else has asked any questions while I've been on. The last question that I received is, what excites me about travel? So again, if you're new to this space, you haven't been around me for a little bit, my husband and my 7 children are embarking on moving into tents. So we're literally getting rid of the house. We're going to move from Tasmania and start to explore. Now, we do have some potential destinations, one of which is a beautiful community that we may step into and actually do some permaculture and build a beautiful sustainable community there, but before we really deep dive into that, our intention is to do some travel, and to especially travel up the east coast of Australia. That's where I'm most interested in experiencing, but who knows, once we get on the road we might not stop. But essentially we're going to be living in tents with our kids. At this point, we don't know if when we get to the mainland, if we will upgrade to a new car and then a caravan, who knows, or a bus even. We don't actually know those things because we'll know when we get there. We're just saying yes to the adventure and seeing where it will take us. And along the trip, I'm contemplating doing some live workshops around Australia as well. So I may put a call out for people in a particular location if they would like to have an in-home workshop at their place, that I may come and teach things like fermentation and particular health stuff that you might be interested in along the way. So I'm excited about that. But also the thing that I'm also excited about, and I've had this like driving inquisitive nature about me for a while now, which is to explore more of our Indigenous culture when it comes to native foods and plants and medicines. So I'm keen to actually learn and discover and find those things along the road and start to investigate and look at those and teach some of what I already know, but also some of the things that I will be learning along the way as well to you guys. And that space is in my YouTube channel. So if you are interested in watching our travels and seeing us, harvest and wild forage and do all of those things and turn them into food for our family, feel free to come and jump on my YouTube channel. Um, it's essentially Christina Mathewson. If you put that into YouTube and look for the Traveling Naturopath, you'll find me. And I'll pop it into the comments here probably later as well. Yeah, so I'm excited about that. I am also like, no adventure comes without out some trepidation as well. And I was mentioning this to a client that I had today that, as you're about to embark on something new, on the precipice of something new, some adventure, some step, some change that you're about to make, there is a lot of shaking up of your snow globe. So, right now, for example, where I'm looking at all of the things in my house and I'm asking the question, would I pay for you to be transported to wherever I go? And if the answer is no, then it gets sold or gets donated, etc. Um, and so that brings up a lot of things too, along with, the world is in a state where I've had probably about 20 people tell me, don't expect to get a rental here because there is none. And I'm like, yeah, I'm actually not expecting to get a rental because I don't know that I actually ever want to live in a house again. Um, I may do, but I feel like I want it to be something different than just the normal sort of house because, yeah, I'm feeling that way inclined. So there we go. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to. I'm also really looking forward to walking on as many beaches and swimming in as much water as I possibly can on the adventure as well, because I know that for me, that really lights me up. It feels really good for me. It makes me energetically in tune and aligned and able to be in my creative genius and zone where I'm really connecting in with the earth and I'm connecting in with um, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, and feeling more or most of me. So there we go. That's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah, if you've enjoyed this question